look at the middle of funnel. You have to look at what is happening right now. I would say you need to go and look at your pipeline and get rid of the crap so you can focus on the things that's real. This is not the time to inflate the pipeline. Focus on what is real. If you need to leave it in the system because of optics, but as a leader in your teams, the stuff that's real, you have to focus on that. So that's for Q4. Optimize whatever you can in there. There's a million ways to do that. That's what we specialize in. The other side is looking at Q1. Because most of your reps put the date in there just for optics again. What kind of value can we create for those Q1 opportunities that will make them make a decision or that can motivate them to make a decision in December? And you'll be surprised. The right kind of structure the conversation the right way. I was saying to a client this week, the close date or the go live date. This thing between that would give you 8 weeks back. Now, we need to close in December now. I didn't realize it was a go live date. So sometimes we just haven't sanity checked some of our deals in those ways. And it's just about extreme rigor now.
You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business. Welcome to the RevOps Champions podcast. I'm very happy to be joined today by Hannah Ajikawo. She is the founder and CEO of Revenue Funnel, a HubSpot modern sales leader, and a LinkedIn top voice in B2B sales. With 17 years of experience leading sales and go-to-market teams, Hannah is known for making sales simple, and we'll be digging more into that, by aligning revenue teams, leveraging AI, and replacing outdated playbooks with strategies that actually scale. She's helped SaaS and service companies generate 4 times more pipeline in just 10 weeks without additional spend or headcount. Hannah's approach blends human connection, which I love, data-driven strategy, and modern technology to help companies sell the way buyers actually want to buy. Hannah, welcome to the RevOps Champions podcast.
Thank you so much. No, happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Hannah, let's dive in. One of the first things I wanted to ask you is you often talk about that sales should be simple.
Yeah.
What do you think makes sales more complicated than it should be, and how can leaders start making it simple again?
I think the biggest thing that makes sales appear complicated and more complicated is that for some reason, and I blame the model of trying to create robots so that we could create more predictable revenue, right? Which I get it. But the reason why sales becomes complicated is because we strip people of their humanity and individuality often because we need them to follow a particular formula that we know works. So what happens is people lose sight of what makes them human because they need to now sound like these really specific things that I must say and must hear and must do. And then what happens is they come full circle again and they get back to just being themselves, and all of a sudden performance improves. So I think at an individual level, it becomes complicated. When you do that at aggregate, it's just this big system of people who are just forgetting some real core fundamentals simply because we're trying to train them to be these individuals that follow a formula. So it's like there's a happy medium that can take place. And then what we do is we compromise. We try to over-architect the systems and the processes that support them. And I get it because we want to measure everything. We don't want anyone doing anything we can't measure. So then we then create this spider web of systems and stuff that we often don't need because it feels like the natural thing to do, which is crazy for me to say as someone who would put on the hat of a CRO. What's the best way? So I'm a CRO and I'm like a RevOps person in costume. So it's
right.
like,
yes, I love it.
So that's it. So that's kind of why I think that's happening.
I want to unpack more of this, because you seem to have built this philosophy around clarity and alignment in revenue teams. So what does making sales easy really look like in practice for high growth companies?
For me, it's about getting right down to the baseline fundamentals, which is if you think about it on the surface, right, we can't sell without someone buying. It doesn't exist. It's not as an activity that can happen on its own. Selling involves the exchange of some kind of thing, often money. That's what we're hoping for. And we can't do that unless someone buys. So we take that as a baseline fundamental. So we have to figure out, okay, cool, well, what will make someone buy? And then we find a bit more about that out. And it's like, okay, so how can we help them? And I've mentioned this before, but if you go back historically to the initial meaning of sell, it comes from the word selan, which means to give. And we kind of got rid of that and just focused on what can we kind of like throw at people and hopefully they grab it. So the big thing here is we start focusing back on how do we help people to buy. And all of a sudden you realize, okay, the only way I can help someone is if I just figure out what's really important to them. And then we
Uh-huh.
start to figure out, okay, let's keep building on that. But what we do is we say we have a product, maybe you've done your market research, we're doing some brilliant stuff, but we have a product and I just go find people that need it. Makes sense. But then I'm just going to keep throwing it at them until hopefully I get the timing right. What we ideally want to do is we want to make people see that we are responding to something that is pretty evidently a need, take them out of their status quo, and then help them navigate from that status quo to a place where they're motivated to take action. And the reason why I've focused so much on simplifying it and really attuning to the buyer is I had to look at myself as I stepped into consulting 8 years ago and say, what did I do when I was really successful? Like, why was it that when I was a junior rep, I was punching way above my weight? What was it about me that I was doing? And the first thing I did is I got comfortable with myself. So I stripped back all the training. I was like, I mean, the training's great, but I'm just going to stop pretending to be this person that I'm not. And I'm just going to
Mhm.
like use a bit of common sense and weave the training in it. And when I found that I did that, I was like, "Oh, that's the cheat code." And that was
Mhm.
kind of so I've kind of like baked and extrapolated what I've learned from there into everything I do today.
Awesome. Actually, as you were explaining sort of the simplicity and the basics of why someone buys something and why there's someone else on the other end who might want to sell them something, you remind me of my one of my favorite books that I read last year was which was called The Go Giver. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I've got the whole series.
Oh, you do?
Freaking
Yes.
I love those books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because especially if you've grown up in a more competitive sort of capitalist society, pick the country.
Yeah.
The we've all sort of grown up, and of course, the more ambitious you are, and of course, the closer you are to sales, um, the and if you add ambition and sales, then people typically want to be known as a go getter, not a go giver.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think anyway. So for the folks listening, if you haven't yet read The Go Giver, Bob Berg, I highly recommend it.
It's great. It's like that. There's the Go Giver. I can't remember the names, but it's like purple, green, red, blue. I've got them all. And there's one I haven't finished yet. But yeah, I love the principles in them. Hence why I kept going back and buying them. And it's
Right.
very much centered around giving and understanding what people need and what's important to people. And it's such a wonderful mindset shift.
Right. Which of course it reminds me. So you and I, even though we unfortunately weren't able to connect, and I figured we would run into each other in San Francisco last month, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
We were at Inbound, as we know, the amazing people at HubSpot have a very similar philosophy of help educate, provide valuable content to the buyer, so that when they're in the right time and the fit
Mhm.
feels right, they can then reach out once they've made an informed decision. They're not being, sort of knocked over the head to buy something. So anyway, but we won't get distracted by some of the announcements that were made
A
there
lot.
because there's a lot more to unpack.
Yeah.
So Hannah, and then you're also for the last couple of years you've been doing something called a go to market health check.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I try to practice what I preach, and I can't work with everyone. We typically work with companies that are sort of million or 2 million into ARR, B2B SaaS or services. And they've kind of like got to a place where they just don't have the sophistication in their go-to-market model. And they're like, we just need to figure out what to do now. We don't want to run out of time. Developed quite a big audience of people that I can't sell to, which is always very useful. And, but I like being useful. And I've found that when I was speaking to people, when I was navigating a lot of these circles, I'm like, wow, a lot of people are not thinking about their overall strategy. They're just really tactical. How can I help them look at their business and find quick win opportunities? And then I spun up the first version of the quiz in 2020, maybe end of 2020, beginning of 2023 or something. And the whole purpose was to give people enough information so they can see where there's broken areas and then get some like real hardcore advice on what to do next. I think I gave away too much. I had a lot of people say, "Hey, Hannah," I actually had the same people come back every quarter to see it as my score improved. I was like, I've
Uh-huh.
given away too much. But it was interesting to see even just the data that came out of it, just like 72%. Do you have a documented go-to-market strategy? No. Do you have, consistent qualifications on where you engage buyers? 64% no. I was like, whoa, like this is serious. So yeah, the health check is there. It takes about 5 minutes. It used to be much longer, and I was like, okay, 100 questions is probably not the best way in.
Uh-huh.
We've made it shorter, and it just gives a whole handbook on where you should. What's the next kind of 3 to 5 actions I should take to fix areas in my go to market. So yeah,
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we learned that the hard way too. We created a tool called the RevOps score a few years ago,
yeah,
and we were wondering why no one was completing it, and then we realized it was just far too complicated,
yeah,
and
yeah, a bit
people
long.
weren't just yeah. So we shortened it, and through the learnings we also then changed the name. It's now called the Growth Readiness Score.
Nice.
But we've just really condensed it, and it can literally take 10 to 15 minutes, which seems a lot more realistic. Therefore, we're getting a lot more. I think it's getting a lot more value. Put it that way.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So but people take it. Lots of people do it and never speak to me again. People put in fake details, not realizing that if you put in your real details, you'll get like a 10-page handbook of very real, accurate data on what to do next. But yeah, they realize that afterwards.
Right, right. So, and then as you were sharing the statistics of your GTM health check, the first number you mentioned was 72%.
Yeah.
That is that related to your 72.9% Ronaldo principle at all?
It's not, but I could probably do that. Yeah, you know what? That was so random. I was doing some random research. I didn't even know how it came up. I think I saw it, and I was like, "How often is that?" And I was like, "Oh my god!" So the what you're referring to is every time Ronaldo steps on the pitch, there's a 72.9% chance he'll score. And I was like, actually, this is just a great way to think about how we can just go live. And I love that I have the luxury of working with companies that are happy to lean into that 72% mindset because otherwise you just wait for perfection. You're waiting for the perfect setup. And it's like, just put it out there and get the data and learn
Right.
and iterate fast. So yeah, I always say like launch when you're at a point when it's good enough and you're highly likely to be successful and think like, have the plans in place. But once the foundations are up, you can just keep building.
Yeah, that is interesting. And in fact, are you familiar with Roger Federer's sort of now I think increasingly more famous percentage? So
Yeah.
he was interviewed recently. Well, in fact, and he did a commencement speech at a university in the U.S. where he was talking about, and I guess the reason he was asked to speak was because he was one of the most successful tennis players of all time,
Mm,
and he shared a very scary statistic with the students who were graduating, um, and in the form of a question of like, how many points do you think I won in my career? And the answer was 54%. So he only won 54. Well, I say only. He won 54%
yeah.
of all the points that he ever played and as a professional, which was only 0.3% more than, let's say, than the other players. So it's really in an EOS, which a lot of our clients use, and you might be familiar with as well, the entrepreneurial operating system.
Yeah.
They talk about, everything should be, the goal should be 80%, never 100, right?
Can't be 100.
Because if you're setting 100% goals, you're probably not pushing yourself far enough. So you set a goal, and if you achieve 80% of it, then you've made
Yeah.
great progress, and just do it again. But I think
Hmm.
these are really interesting numbers when you look at someone, whether it's Ronaldo on the soccer pitch or the football pitch as you call it, or Roger Federer on the court, and they're only winning a much lower percentage of the points that you
Yeah.
think. It's all about just showing up and doing the thing
Yeah.
and focusing on the future, not focusing on the past, right?
Think about it. If a typical B2B business won 54% of their at bats, I mean, they'd be very happy. So are their investors. So would everyone.
Exactly.
Right. 72% now, yeah, we're going out for drinks every day, pretty much. So yeah, it's an interesting concept. But it actually came out of me accepting the fact that in the beginning I wasn't I've changed that CEO hat on and stuff, but I was a starter of many things and the finisher of nothing.
Uh-huh.
And I had that feedback once, like you start a lot, but you don't really finish it. And I said, what if I can start it and get things to a point where it's kind of finished? So at least I can execute it rather than just like it goes into another Google folder. So yeah, getting better.
Well, yeah, but yeah, that's something I know a lot about as well. I'm also in that category of I start a lot of things, and I need to collaborate with people around me who are better at finishing things, but aren't maybe as good as at starting things. So
Yeah,
it's all about
exactly.
partnering and collaboration. Hannah, so in your sort of experience and career, you've seen how misalignment can cost companies, a lot of money, whether it's hundreds of thousands or millions, and choose the currency. What's an example that comes to mind where alignment or the lack of it completely changed a company's growth path?
I think the whole misalignment alignment conversation, I don't think everyone really like tries to work out what that even means for their company when they say, oh, we're
Uh-huh.
not aligned. I don't think they really know what they're talking about oftentimes. I think it's just something that feels natural to say because at the moment sales don't like marketing and vice versa. But alignment is like a group of people climbing up Mount Everest and making sure that they have the same thread, well, rope, ideally not thread because that won't be very safe, but
Right.
rope between
Yeah.
them, and they've all got the clips and that way that you stay connected so no one just drops and you all kind of like disappear. That's alignment to me. So it goes through the entire business. It's not just sales marketing. It's
Yeah.
everything. It's for
Absolutely.
how the bit. So I think the first thing people do is they don't look at alignment across the whole business. They just look at it as sales don't like the leads that marketing have, and marketing don't think sales are very good. It's much bigger than that. So when you first accept that, then you can start to look at the problem properly, and then you realize that, oh wow, there's a lot of disconnect from people not actually trusting their peers as leaders to actually execute and take them to the level that they next need to. So
Uh,
imagine you've got a leader in power whose boss does not believe in them, in the plan. You're aligned on that. You're misaligned from there because it's like we have this plan, don't think the current leader can do it, but due to politics and this and that and this, we just have to leave them there to continue executing a broken system. Then you think about all of the other pieces around, KPIs and targets and how we view our customer. What does that journey look like, and who's all of those things? And when you start to connect the dots, where people first accept what alignment means, and then they recognize what are the things that we pretty much we know that is broken, but we can't change it. So how do we start to figure out some kind of workaround? Then we start to make sure that there is a clear understanding of even roles and responsibilities. Just articulating that, I've seen convert into revenue simply because people realize, oh, that's what I'm in charge of. I didn't know that. That's
uh,
never been made clear to me. So simple understanding and clear role and responsibilities is one thing. And then of course we get into much more specifics around, how things are handed over and, how we treat different prospects and customers and stuff like that. But I think that we get so into the weeds of that tactical bit and we see a couple of wins that we forget above that someone's not owning that number or that function or that thing.
uh.
And it's usually ownership that I see most things. That's where I see a lot of things get broken.
Like
Yeah.
ownership, and as far as who owns the number or who owns the
Who
business.
owns part of this revenue process from where the cash starts to come in or the lead comes in,
Uh-huh.
and it's starting to convert into cash? There's parts where it's like, oh, we didn't know that we were responsible for that specific thing, and
Uh,
checking how it's going or just anything. So I see a lot of ownership and responsibilities broken down. I also think that a lot of people don't set really clear expectations. So it's like there's two questions. What's your role? Are you 100% clear on your responsibilities? Most people will say no. Most people do not know what's expected of them. It's so
right.
crazy to me.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when they share it, people around them are like, "Oh, we'd also expect you to do this." And it's like, "Oh, I I never knew that." It sounds crazy. I encourage everyone listening to this, go and ask that question to a few people around the business. It's going to make you nauseous.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And that's one of the, I alluded to EOS earlier,
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons that we work really well with a lot of EOS companies, is because that's one of the reasons that companies start using EOS, because it's all about clarity of communication, clarity of role and responsibility, accountability for what you're doing, etc. So I mean, you're right. Even with EOS in
yeah,
place, or whatever operating system a company is using, you're still going to have those issues,
yeah.
because again, they're human, right? They're human issues,
Mm,
and that works both ways. I think, to your point, it's just lack of clarity and lack of repeated communication, because the business is growing, and
yeah,
the faster it's growing, the more true this is that
precisely.
roles change, and therefore the communication needs to change, and the clarity needs to be reframed. Hannah, I mean, I know you're very familiar with revenue operations or RevOps as a framework, but I'm
Mm,
guessing your sort of ideal clients, so those sort of $1 to $2 million, you know, ARR SaaS and services businesses, are they already thinking about RevOps at that stage as a model
Yeah.
to overcome the things that you're talking about? So because, one of the reasons you use RevOps is to create more alignment between people, between processes, between the data, between the technology. Yeah.
Yeah. So the bracket's actually between kind of 1, 2, and about 20 million. It's
Okay.
just that's like the lowest end. So yeah, they're all thinking about it. They're all the ones that are at the early stages are just trying to get things set up. So as they transition from like Excel or using a kind of broken CRM, they just downloaded it and now they're like, we just threw crappy data in it. And then of course the larger ones are really sometimes they've already started to over architect things because you
Right.
know that you first like throw in that field because it's convenient for that campaign. And now it's like, why do we still have that? And what kind of reporting and why we repurpose that part of the system? So there's a lot of things that make sense at like 2, 3 million, but then when you're at 10 million, we
Yeah.
don't have the historical data because of the way we were reporting on it. So they are really thinking about it to address some of the alignment, and that's so they can remove some of the ambiguity and from it. So we're like, here's just the black and white objective picture, and what do we do with this now? What do we do with what we're seeing and what we're learning?
Right. Right. We're talking, a lot about data, really. You've made a sharp distinction between using data and running on data. How can leaders build a let's say call it data culture that empowers smart decisions instead of blind ones?
I think it was probably a few years ago that I realized that the whole idea of being data driven was a bit flawed. And being data informed made more sense. I tried to when I was thinking about this, I was trying to think of an examples. I've run just for kind of like as a metaphor. So I've run 2 half marathons. No desire to run another one or run a marathon. I was training for a full marathon, and then a half marathon came up. I was like, well, there you go. Now, in my first marathon, I was actually I was heavier and much heavier, and I finished that one faster. The second one, I didn't train and I was much slimmer, but I just spent 2 weeks in Florida. So it was the next day after arriving. I had cramps and everything. But if we take the data from those, right, in one you might say, okay, wow, looking at your time, you average 7 minutes per kilometer in that it's like 23.5 kilometers or something.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, okay, we're gonna just that's your data, that's the speed you run. The next one is, but if you look at the actual data and all of the different elements of it and figure out how do we use it to inform it, then you'll realize in race 2, actually it's not that's her average speed. It's her average speed, but she starts off at 8 minutes kilometers and then she really speeds up when it's downhill to 6 minutes and then goes back up to about 7.5. So what you're doing there is you're being informed by the data to say, based on different conditions, these different things can happen.
Yeah.
What we tend to do in business is say, this is our average. We average X without considering the context that, oh, wow, we had a really huge event. We forgot about that. Or we had this many reps at that time. That's why we're doing this. Or we had this much budget. So we just try to copy paste. And that's why when companies say we're going to hire 10 more reps to get 10x revenue, they realize very quickly it doesn't work like that. So
Yeah.
I say if we're informed by the data and we're saying, okay, 7 is an average, but let's look at the detail.
Uh-huh.
We can see that in rough conditions, we start off slow, a bit like a ramping period. So yeah, I see that we kind of have to shift how we're thinking about data in order to use it better.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a really good example of how the importance of contextualizing data, I guess, is how
Yeah.
you're summarizing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
really good point. Which talking about context, there's no way we were going to make it through a conversation more than half an hour without talking about AI.
Yeah.
And as we know, one of the most critical things that any regular user of AI today knows that to get good results by using AI, the better the context, the
Mhm.
better the results, right? So AI is clearly reshaping the sales landscape as it is reshaping every other landscape. What's the most exciting or surprising way you've seen AI actually change how people sell and or buy today?
I love that I love that you can go to an LLM today as a buyer and you can really specify your needs. Like it's not just show me the best sales engagement tools. It's I need a sales engagement tool. I'm a small company and we're based in this country. So I'd really prefer if it can have this kind of security. And our legal team are going to go on about this and our finance team have a low budget. can you give me free options that I can look at?
Hmm.
Google can't give you that. It's just too much data in that search field. It will take you to a blog, and you're like, I don't trust it because it was written in 2007. Um, I love that from a buying perspective, the specificity is that an LLM can provide is incredible, and also the fact that even now, as a buyer myself, going onto companies' websites where they've already started to integrate AI and be in a position to just get answers to questions. Hey, if I want to do this, is that possible in the platform? It's like, yeah, it's like, oh my, without even having to speak to anyone.
Yeah.
And I don't know why people don't realize that this is what buyers want. They don't want to talk to you yet. They just want to do some searching and get the information. So
Right.
I love that side. On the sales side, on the kind of vendor side, I'm I'm excited of what can be done. I think the biggest thing right now, if you think about all the platforms, the thing that's exciting the most, not it writing emails, it's the amount of data it can analyze at once. And you can put that into any context across any area of the go-to-market. The fact that you can put in dozens of data sources, you've got this massive token window of, hundreds of thousands of tokens of analysis that you can do. It's just the time saving is incredible. My thing to caveat that is I do not think we are yet adjusted to the fact that we get responses quicker. It's given us too much work. Can you see how that happens, right? So normally you'd get something and you'd say, I need to build a plan, and it take you weeks and you have that. Now you're like, I need to build a plan. It takes 5 minutes. You're like, damn, now I've got to use it. I haven't got time to use it yet. So there's all these things that analysis and that freedom of information and insight is happening so fast that we can't act quickly enough on it.
Mm.
That's what I'm seeing. So people probably have billion-dollar ideas on their desktop. They just can't get to it yet.
Yeah. And I think what you're touching on is it's funny is this is something that we've been talking about quite a bit in the last couple of months here is if you'd said the word workflow in our context, that's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, those are the things that we create, for ourselves in our CRM and for our
Yeah.
clients in their CRM. We're automating a particular workflow, and we've been doing this for, a long time. But I think what you're alluding to now is getting back to the true meaning of the word workflow. We as humans, whether we're buying or selling, but let's stick to the selling
Mm.
example for now. I think you just alluded to the fact that our literal workflow, in other words, how we can spend our days
Yeah.
in business is changing so fundamentally that we haven't yet figured out what that looks like.
Yeah. Not at all.
Because to your point, you can get up. And for some reason, I'm speaking to a lot of early risers lately, but people who get up at 3:30 or 4 a.m. and go and do a sauna and meditate, and then they start doing all these things, and typically AI comes into the picture at some point.
Yeah.
They're realizing they can do those things. They can have these thoughts and work on a very powerful project very quickly, and within 15 minutes they've got something.
Yeah.
But to your point, that completely changes how their workflow for the day, the week, the month, the quarter, etc. So yeah,
So
it
true.
is. There's some fundamental shifts that we all have to make.
I love that you mentioned that it's the true definition of workflow. It's really that we haven't caught up with how fast we can now react to things. We just haven't. It's a bit like when someone says, "What will you?" Everyone wants to win a lottery, but what will you do once you have the money? Oh, I haven't thought about that part.
Yes.
It's just that we haven't quite caught up with. You ask for things, you take it off your plate. Now you ask for things, you get it, and it's like that seems so exciting, but when can I act on it? I don't know.
Yes.
So that's the thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Hannah, so something else I wanted to talk to you about that comes up a lot, and I'm not sure if it probably comes up for you a lot as well. But so as a HubSpot partner, when we start a conversation with a prospective client, they're already probably 3 steps further down the line from where they should be for us to help them effectively, right? Because when they're introduced to us or referred to us or whatever, they're saying, "Oh, you should meet these folks from Dynamico. They're a HubSpot partner, and they will build and optimize your CRM for you."
Yeah.
So they're coming into it thinking that is the goal, is
Mm.
build a CRM, and we're like, yes, that is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, we need to go a few steps further up. Now, you mentioned earlier that you approach things kind of like a CRO would approach things,
Yeah.
right? And which I think is exactly. I think this would be really valuable for you to share your sort of context and perspective on this, because I think that's ultimately what we're realizing is that we that's what we need to get our clients to is like, okay, so who is this CRM going to benefit ultimately? Of course, it's going to benefit the entire business because we're building your revenue engine. But who
Mm,
is it? But coming back to this accountability piece that you were alluding to earlier too, who is accountable to make sure that the revenue team meets their metrics and objectives, and
yeah.
that's typically the CRO, right? And so the CRO has together with the rest of the leadership team, they have certain metrics that they track, and hopefully it's not more than three to start with, right? So whatever those, what would you say are, like in your experience, are the three most common metrics, whether it be SaaS or services or anything else that a
Yeah.
CRO would be tracking?
I really think, and I thought this for about 4 years now, that we should just be looking at sales velocity. I
Okay.
really feel like we need to be looking at, the number of opportunities we're getting, what's the average contract value, what's the win rate, and what's the sales cycle.
Uh-huh.
Because when you collectively look at all those things, you can see how quickly money or opportunities are flowing through to money. And how quickly are you going from assumed value to perceived value with a customer where they can finally sign on the dotted line. For the most part, most people, if you think about fast moving SaaS, they don't always do a pilot, right? It's just you kind of go for a sales process. Let's think about the sort of 20K, 30K mark. You just get into it. You don't do like a trial. You just get into it. So they're perceiving that you can provide value, and that's what you've sold them, and then hopefully they capture that. So sales
Uh-huh.
velocity for me, I think, is a nice collective metric for CROs to focus on. And I also want RevOps. I just feel like that it goes hand in hand.
So, what about for larger SaaS companies? And I keep challenging. Because we deal a lot with sort of lower mid market size companies. They're typically 50 to 2,000 people and 100 to 1.5 billion in revenue. And as you talked about earlier, like the challenges you have at different stages, 1 million is different to 10 million, is different to 100 million, is different to
Oh
a
yeah,
billion. What we see, there's a certain point where pipeline is a very common metric
yeah, of course, yeah, yeah.
to a certain point, but then it flips over to NRR at some point, and then but for some reason LTV is always the one that sticks out to me for companies that can, whether it's SaaS or in fact for both SaaS and services, but in many other business models, the best customers are the ones they already have, right?
Yeah,
So which
yeah.
is how do you grow your lifetime value of your existing customers?
Absolutely. I think that's the thing. When we talk about KPIs, it transitions. It's different at different times depending on objectives, right? So people are going to get a ton in, and it's going to first be like, we just need meetings. Then it's going to be like, we need pipeline. Then they're going to get a lot of pipeline and realize, wow, this pipeline's really expensive. So it flows, and it's like, we need revenue. Then you go back. So you're bouncing between leading and lagging indicators. LTV is that part where it finally gets to a point where people are saying, we've got enough data to determine what is a lifetime value of a customer. And when you've got that data point, it's nice because you want to try and, of course, the goal is to continue to grow that, and also get your cash back as fast as possible. So to be fair, it's hard to answer because it does change depending on what the objectives are.
Yeah, and where and the maturity of the business and yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So then you mentioned we're talking about this sort of how the CRO is looking at things again, depending on where they are, where the company is in their sort of journey and maturity. And then you mentioned RevOps. So
Mm.
at what point do you think RevOps becomes a play, and what is a CRO looking to, from, like, if they have a RevOps team, whether it's a team of one, two, three, or a combination of an internal RevOps person with an outsourced RevOps team like we provide, what are they typically looking for at those different stages?
I think at the really, really earliest stage, let's just say like sub a million, once you starting to see some kind of information come through, I think what you ideally want to do is someone in your team should learn just the basics, like how to. You can watch maybe getting started on HubSpot as an example, right? And just kind of get the basics in. And then you realize, okay, we're capturing data, but we're not doing anything with it. Because I think that's the first thing. How do I just log in so I can capture data, like add something to a CRM? And then once you get past that, you're seeing a little bit more repetition in behaviors from your market, from your sales process. Then you want to start to add a little bit more sophistication. And it really depends. I think a sales driven CEO and business leader is going to do that from day one. That's just how they think. They're like, I've got a sales process from the moment I start my business. A technical one won't. A technical founder won't release. I think once you transition into the next phase, you've got your customer data, but you're like, they already pay us. Now you're figuring out we've got all these people that we've engaged with, we've interacted with, but we're not doing anything with them. So how do we start to now create systems that allow us to monitor, check signals, reach out to these individuals? So I think you start to transition into this is a wasted opportunity. And then
Uh,
of course you get more sophisticated at the top of funnel where you want to start really connecting the dots so you can capture any kind of intent of any sort, any signals, capturing any demands that you see. So I think then it's like maintenance scale, right? Like we've got enough data. Where do we put the money to go faster? Because now you need the business, you need your data to tell you what's happening. So
uh-huh.
you're looking more at analytics. And that's where you really want to start thinking, we should probably get someone in to do this so we can see, because it's like setting up a couple of sales sequences and putting the Google Pixel on a website is all good, or it connecting it to your CRM. But when it gets to really understanding, okay, what do we do now? And then getting that visibility, it's scary when you realize, oh, our cost per lead is how many hundreds? I didn't know it was that high, right? So
Yeah,
you need that because you need the numbers so you know where to put your next penny.
right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is interesting to sort of to realize how different it is at every stage because again for really sophisticated businesses, once they start tracking LTV, the second metric that they track is CAC because
Yeah.
you want your LTV to increase and you want your cost of customer acquisition to continuously
Absolutely.
decrease, unless of course there's something going on, which I think for a lot of companies right now that is happening, and
Mm.
you might have to increase your CAC again to make sure you're continuing to increase your LTV.
Yeah, you need to get the business in. I get it. So it just fluctuates. But we want to get to that the magic number and make sure that we're not obliterating anything. But now AI is in, everyone's throwing money at it. So just say you're doing AI and you get lots of money.
Yeah, right. So Hannah, as we wrap up here, we are at Q4 2025. It's always an important quarter for a lot of people who are sales or revenue focused, and of course, just business leaders in general. What advice do you have for the folks listening who are trying to finish 2025 strong and are trying to set themselves up for success in 2026?
Yeah. So I'd actually give advice that I gave to a client this week. One is we know our sales cycle, right? So we know that if getting anything in you for some businesses, if it's 3 months out, it's going to be pretty tough. And anyone coming in wanting to buy now, you're like, oh, are they putting me on cost? There's lots of things there, but you need to do two things. One is look at the middle of the funnel. You have to look at what is happening right now. And I would say you need to go and look at your pipeline and get rid of the crap, just so you can focus in on the things that's real. This is not the time to inflate the pipeline. Focus on what is real. If you need to leave it in the system because of optics, but as a leader in your teams, the stuff that's real, you have to focus on that. So that's for Q4. Optimize whatever you can in there. There's a million ways to do that. That's what we specialize in. The other side is looking at Q1 because most of your reps put the date in there just for optics again. So let's go and say what kind of, what can we create in helping, what kind of value can we create for those Q1 opportunities that will make them make a decision or that can motivate them to make a decision in December. And you'll be surprised. The right kind of structure the conversation the right way could get them there. So I was saying to a client this week, is that the close date or the go live date? Just distinguishing between that would give you 8 weeks back. Okay, we need to close in December now. I didn't realize it was a go live date. So sometimes we just haven't sanity checked some of our deals in those ways, and it's just about extreme rigor now.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, really, really good advice.
yeah.
Anna, thank you so much for joining us on the RevOps Champions podcast,
Uh,
and I look forward to sharing, all your insights and perspectives soon as this episode goes live.
Thank you so
So,
much.
thanks again.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.